Hello. We're going to talk about microaggressions today, again, for mixed race people. So I have a previous video about general microaggressions for mixed race people, but today I wanted to talk about specific experiences that I've had in both my tech experience, because I worked in tech companies for over 5 years, and then also my grad school experience training to be a therapist. So we'll begin first with my tech experience and the microaggressions I experienced there. So in tech, I worked at a few startups, but in all of these startups, there was always something problematic said by one of my coworkers. So I'll go in chronological order. So the first microaggression experience was like week 2. One of my coworkers who was kind of close to a team lead, so higher than me, and I thought everything they said was true because it was also my first full-time job, so just believed in everybody who was older than me. So she was walking down my row and my desk before she was leaving for work, and she's like, "Oh, you should join the Black ERG group. Meet Monday at 6 o'clock every week." If you haven't watched my previous video, I am a mix of white and Japanese. This is microaggression with a big M and a big A, because she just assumed I was black and was assumed that you also want to hang out with other black people every week on Monday. Yeah, I had to then figure out what to do about this, because I at that time felt like it was my responsibility to make sure no one felt really weird about this and there was no embarrassment on anyone. And when I say anyone, this one white individual. So I even talked to my manager, and I had a one-on-one, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, what do I do? This person thinks I'm black and I'm not." And have 30-minute conversation about this, and I ended up just basically doing all this work because this other person thought I was another race, and I wanted to make them feel okay that they messed up. Yeah, that was my first experience. Okay. The second one, this is just very common going into happy hours, and the people that I don't usually interact with, they'll just say, "What are you?" I'm done with that experience. That just happens all the time. It happens to this day, probably monthly. Anytime I go into a setting where I don't know that many people, someone is gonna say, "What are you?" or make a guess. Wow, it's even worse when they make a guess. Anyways, the third time, or the third microaggression I can think of off the top of my head, when an engineering manager wanted to have a meeting with me for the first time. So we didn't really have a relationship, and we just met for the first time to talk about some work thing. And this dude decided to start the meeting by saying, "Are you Hawaiian?" And I don't know why he thought this was appropriate. We don't interact. We're not friends. We're not even coworker friends, I literally have talked to you maybe half a sentence in my life. And the first thing that you ask me is, "Are you Hawaiian?" Which the answer is no, but I had learned through my however many years, and I didn't want to do the work this time. So instead of, thinking about all the creative ways I can help this person feel not comfortable, I said to myself, "You know what? Make this person feel uncomfortable." So I said no. And then he felt uncomfortable. And he said, oh, okay, well, let's talk about this work project, A, B, C, D, F, G. And I was like, "Yeah, that's right. You can feel uncomfortable because you aren't supposed to be asking these questions to me." So that was example 3. Example 4 is I was on the engineering team, and stereotypically they may be a little nerdy. So they were a little nerdy. They were Japanese nerdies. They were otaku. So they would have conversations about their anime and their manga they were watching, and they would sometimes use Japanese phrases when we were talking about non-anime things, and they would say "Oh, sugoi," and these words, right? And I think one time they were trying to say right, right hand, and they were hidari. And then they're like, "Oh, wait, I totally messed up. It's supposed to be migi." And then the other guy was like, "No, I think it's hidari." And I was like, "Right is migi." And they just totally ignored me, and they're like, "Oh, yeah, no, wait, is it hidari? Or is it migi?" I'm like, hello, I know the answer to Japanese first grade level. Like, right is Migi. Like, they totally ignored that. And they were just like, oh my gosh, is it Migi or Hidari? Migi or Hidari? I was like, yet again, another time when I know more Japanese than you think I do because of how I look. And that concludes my experiences being mixed race in the tech industry. Now we move on to grad school, training to be a therapist. So in grad school, we've learned a tiny bit about the mixed race experience. Like there's one chapter on mixed race people that we've read in class in like the 2 years I've been there. And it was in the multicultural counseling class, but the chapter was like a thin chapter, you know, like maybe less than, like it's like 7 pages. Like that's all we got. And then we only discussed it if you were in a particular small group discussion. Like we didn't discuss it as a whole group, and you didn't discuss it at all if you weren't in this very specific small group. You know, we don't talk about mixed race experiences even in like grad school to be a therapist. And you know, these therapists are going to eventually see mixed race people and they're not going to know what they're talking about. But anyways, that's a whole different problem. Don't expect that people who don't like look into this stuff on their own or like have friends that talk about this, like know that much about it, even if you're a therapist. So I would say generally the people of color in my program know a little bit more than the tech people that I had experience with on mixed race experiences. So they know the certain challenges that we may have. But I would say the white folks in my program do not know more than the white folks outside of my program about the mixed race experience. For example, one of my classmates, maybe like 2 months ago, was like, hey, so you're a mixed race. Do you actually get people to ask you, like, what are you? And I'm like, this is mixed race microaggression 101. Everybody knows that we get this question all the time. Like, all the time. Like, if you know anything about mixed race experience, that is like the thing that everybody talks about. We don't talk about it that much in graduate school for counseling. So clearly, like, there's not much education going around about, like, the experiences that we have. I just wanted to talk about my experiences, and I wanted to specifically talk about mixed race microaggressions and not as much like people of color, because that's a whole different topic that I can talk about. But today I wanted to specifically talk about mixed race. Bye.